Exactly.
So now we're looking in the ODM for the A220-300 because that's what we're in right now. And in the descent and holding section, there's A220-300 diversion charts here at the bottom. Here's where some confusion happens with this and where we see some mistakes. One, people don't read the note at the top that says min fuel equals 3,000. So this is pretty easy to use because it already includes your min fuel, your reserve fuel of 3,000 pounds. Other mistakes we see is they jump to the left side here instead of looking over at the right side of this chart. And the left side is diversion from missed approach. And so this is going to give us the fuel required and the time required to do a missed approach at the destination, climb up to the altitude selected and fly the distance and go down and shoot an approach and land at your alternate and still have that 3,000 pound reserve fuel. That's not what we're doing here. We're doing what it says on this side of the chart, diversion from holding. So we saw 205 miles was the distance to go between Charleston and Dulles. And so what I would look at is I'm probably not going direct, right? And I probably am going to be descending down to a different altitude. So you know what? I'm just going to be pretty conservative here, and I'm going to interpolate in between 5.8 and 7.4, looking at 20,000 feet and in between 200 and 300 miles. There's no way Dulles is just letting you go direct to the airport. It's not happening. So we can be sure that we're going to get a little bit of routing on the way over there. So just using a number in between there, let's just say 6,500 pounds is what I came up with as a number in between the two to give a little bit of a buffer on that distance. So that 6,500 pounds includes the 3,000 pound min fuel. I can get back into Flight Pulse and take a look and do the research function here and search for Dulles and see, well, what's the average go-around fuel? Hey, guess what? It's the same. It's that 900 pounds, right? So back again, we were saying 6,500-ish pounds. Add 900 to that. That number is 7,400 pounds. Well, my first calculation was 12,300 pounds. My second calculation, we came up with 7,400 pounds. 12,300 is obviously greater than the 7,400 pounds. 12,300 pounds is my bingo fuel, whereby I either must be on my way to Dallas or on my way to Dulles to go divert in there. So another thing I like to point out is let's use the time in the hold wisely, right? We should be doing some fact finding here and some gathering of information, right? Let's pull up weather and NOTAMs for Dulles. So how am I going to do that? So if I get into the ACARS and I go into Delta Requests and then I go into weather and I type in KIAD, obviously it's not going to do anything in the sim because they're not going to be able to pull up live data for these NOTAMs. There's an option to pull up the NOTAMs right here. So this is fantastic. You can pull up NOTAMs and start reviewing those early. Obviously, you can use widget weather to pull up real-time weather at Washington Dulles and make sure that it is indeed a good divert option. Remember that you're not subject to alternate minimums. You're subject to the actual minimums on approach when you're making a divert. So that's something to keep in mind. So I can get that information. I also, as I'm getting close to the bingo fuel, I can query ATC about how they want to send me to Dulles. And so what I would do, though, is if I got a routing from them to an alternate, I'll show you a cool trick with that. So let's put in Dulles as the alternate here. I know this is going to mess with the fuel, but I'm trying to get ready for a divert. We're doing this at 20,000 feet. Obviously, it shows I have no gas at Dulles. If I went all the way to DFW, I get it. But if I got routing from ATC and we went down here, we notice now on our Route Via 2 page, there's a scroll bar that shows up. If I scroll down, now I can type in routing to the alternate. So let's say that we went from Charleston to the Armel VOR Alpha Mike Lima and then direct to Dulles, KIAD. Now, I'm unable to load an arrival or anything like that in here until I actually have the alternate airport active as the active destination. But I want to show you what happens with this and how powerful of a tool this is. So if we watch as I go direct to Armel, I won't execute this. As I go direct to Armel, on the left-hand side here on our flight plan init page, we see the destination is changed to Dulles, and my fat fingering bad typing, it made the cruise altitude 2,000 feet, which is obviously not what we'd want to do. And that route is now active, Armel direct to KIAD. So that's a super easy way to set up a divert, is by putting in the information in the VIA 2 page and route VIA 2 and scrolling down. You can get a lot of good info in there to plan for a divert. Another topic on diverts, though, would be no time threats with diverts, right? And again, most of our stuff falls under the time bucket, and I love to teach my new captains, don't do stupid stuff fast. So one thing I like to show is in the checklist, like what would be an example of doing stupid stuff fast, is that if I go into the flight controls section, and let's say we took off and we ended up getting a slat flap fail message, right? And we go through this checklist and click through, and it eventually leads us to find out a landing distance in the ODM. It says the verbiage, land at the nearest suitable airport. Well, I mean, if I'm up at this point right now and I'm looking, oh man, Clarksburg's right there. There's Roanoke is just around the corner. Is that necessarily where I want to go? No, that might not be the best option for you. So take some time, don't do something stupid fast, and figure out where you're going. Dulles with a gigantic runway is a better option. Burn off some gas before you do it. Figure stuff out. Bombardier Airbus Canada does a really nice job of letting you know when something is a no-time threat in the checklist. So if we look at an aft cargo fire, for example, it adds the word immediately, land immediately at the nearest suitable airport. So now you have a little bit of a pressing issue here, and you have to figure out somewhere to put the airplane on the ground. Now, Dulles might be a little far away from present position, but here's a very cool tool. I'm looking at the map now up here, and in this moving map, when I have nearest airports selected and I'm zoomed into the 40-mile range, feathers appear around these airports. The solid feathers equal RNAV approaches, and the hollow feathers equal a localizer-based approach, more than likely an ILS. So as I scroll across here and get that blue feather highlighted, and I give it a click, a couple things are going to happen. One, the approach dialog box, the arrival box here shows up in the map. It's like, did you really want the ILS 21 or did you want something else? But then if I look down at the flight plan init page, we now see the Clarksburg Airport is the destination. The ILS 21 is loaded as the approach. Now, there's other things that you can do to accomplish this as well. If I click on the mini airplane here, I'll cancel this mod out. Let's click on the mini airplane here, and nearest airports shows up. So the nearest airports, hey, I found something wrong. We're in this sim right now. I'll have to correct their bad default work here. This should be 7,500 because we're in an A220-300, and the quick reference landing length for auto brakes medium is 7,500 and not 6,500 feet. This would be correct if we were in a 100 airplane or simulator. So I'll fix that for them. But what we see here is a list of the nearest airports that meet this criteria. And let's say that we had the previous example of the slat flap fail, and we look through it and say, hey, I need an 11,000 foot long runway. I'll change this thing to 11,000 feet, and guess what? Dulles was a very good option here. So just to show you what information it's given you, it's a 092 course, 106 miles away is what it's showing, 14 minutes to get there, and it's got 9,900 pounds of fuel remaining is what it says. Take that with a grain of salt. 9,900 is the maximum number that this thing is going to show, the 9,990 pounds. Notice how every single one of these says that, because it's not going to show anything higher than that. You're landing with more fuel than that. So if I click on the right side here, this is going to load this FMS-based visual for whatever the longest runway at Dulles is that occurs numerically first. So one center is 11,500 feet. I click this. Destination is changed to Dulles, and the visual with the 5-mile extension is loaded to that largest runway at that airport, and that's what it does. If you look now in my map, you can see that currently all of those previous airports have disappeared from view. I zoom out to 80, there's nothing. Now I see Dulles, Pittsburgh, and whatever LCK is, they all showed up because they meet that criteria that I put in the nearest airport dialog box so that I can pick something that's a better divert point. Obviously, the better move is to talk with dispatch before you do this, but this is just a cool tool that you have available to you to select these airports. Another thing is we want to communicate this stuff. Remember our 2 in and 2 out. The ACARS is obviously a great tool. So now we've worked through in our previous example and we came up with a 12,300 pound bingo fuel. And how would I let them know this? I'd go to flight progress in the ACARS and I would tell them, well, actually, I guess in your ACARS in the simulator, it doesn't have this option. But in flight progress, there's an enter, continue, hold box, and it works very well in the airplane. And in that, there is an option that says considering divert. And so that's what I would select. I'm considering a divert to KIAD at 12,300. That's going to prompt dispatch to come back with a bingo fuel, and you've satisfied the requirement of notifying them of the possibility of a divert. So biggest things to remember, if you're not really comfortable with it, take a good look at that flowchart. 15.2.2.1, Delta does a flowchart for everything that's hard. You'll always find that they make a flowchart for anything difficult. So that's a great one to look at and really work through a couple of examples and make sure you're comfortable teaching it, especially with no alternate, because that's what your students are going to be least familiar with. Remember the cool tools about how to enter a route to a divert airport, what you would do in the event of a no-time threat, and what tools are available to you to discover those options. Remember, regular airport is always the best option. So we really should be thinking about regular first and then an alternate airport. And if we really need to, then we can go to those emergency ones that are listed on our Jeppesen Flight Deck Pro on the maps. Thanks again for watching. Let me know if you have questions. Always happy to hear from you guys. Fly safe.